Chapter 4. The next morning, Brenda awoke early to the rumble and clatter of the garbage truck somewhere down the block. She sat up and squinted toward the window. The patch of sky she could see was charcoal gray. Dark clouds hovered menacingly. She had an impulse to settle back down, pull the covers over her head, and hide in bed all day. But she knew her mother would be calling up the stairs any second. There was no way Brenda could hide. She pulled on a pair of black tights, struggling with them, still half asleep. Then she found a short black skirt to go over them. A long-sleeved black crewneck top completed the outfit. I might as well wear black, she thought bitterly. It suits my mood perfectly. She hurried downstairs to the kitchen, where her mother was pouring water into the coffee maker. "Mom, I really have to talk to you," Brenda whispered urgently after making sure Haley wasn't lurking around. "Well, good morning to you, too," her mother exclaimed sarcastically. Mrs. Morgan was a plump, pleasant-looking woman with jagged streaks of white in her short black hair and dramatic dark eyes that, to Brenda, always seemed to see right through people. She was already dressed in loose-fitting jeans and a pale blue denim shirt. "Good morning, Mom," Brenda said impatiently. "I have to talk to you about Haley." "Hallie? Hallie." Brenda's mother sighed and crossed her arms in front of her chest. "Not again, Bren." "No, really, Mom," Brenda insisted shrilly. She's ruining my life." Mrs. Morgan frowned. "Brenda, we've had this discussion before, remember? I told you to be patient with Hallie. It's her life that's being ruined, you know." "Mom!" Her mother raised a hand. "No, stop. You and Hallie are seniors in high school. You should be able to solve your own differences and get along. Maybe you shouldn't have come running to me like a 10-year-old. But, Brenda sputtered. And then she blurted out, "Why do you always take her side?" She knew she sounded babyish. She couldn't help it. Hallie had taken her room, her clothes, and now her boyfriend. Hallie was supposed to be given all the understanding, all the sympathy, just because her parents were going through a messy divorce and staging a big custody battle for her. I'll bet her parents are fighting not to keep her, Brenda thought bitterly. Her mother wants her father to have custody of Hallie, and her father wants her mother to have custody. Brenda snickered at the thought. "What are you laughing about?" her mother asked suspiciously. "Nothing," Brenda replied curtly. "So you're not going to listen to me?" Mrs. Morgan shook her head. "Settle it with Hallie. Don't make me choose sides." "But I'm your daughter," Brenda screamed. At that moment, Hallie entered, a bright smile on her freshly scrubbed face. "Morning, everyone," she chirped. Brenda uttered a loud, exasperated groan and stormed out of the kitchen. The halls of McKinley High rang with shouts and laughter at the end of school that afternoon. Lockers slammed. 2 boys were tossing a Notre Dame cap back and forth, and a third boy, most likely the cap's owner, was trying to snatch it from them. Brenda stepped out of her 7th period study hall and bumped right into Dinah, who was struggling to get her bulging backpack zipped. "Hi," Brenda cried in surprise. "Bad day," Dinah muttered, frowning. "I read the wrong pages for the Spanish exam." "Wow, that's bad news," Brenda sympathized, shaking her head. "Then I spilled half a sloppy joe on my shirt at lunch," Dinah cried, pointing to the dark brown stain that streaked down her pale yellow blouse. "At least the colors match," Brenda said dryly. She chuckled. "I'm not going to laugh at that," Dinah told her sharply. "You always think it's a riot when something bad happens to me." "Not always," Brenda teased. "Listen, can you come to my house now to work on the murder plot? We've really got to do some hard thinking about it." "I can't," Dinah answered unhappily, hoisting the heavy backpack onto her slender shoulders. "I have to go to my job on Mondays." "We're never going to figure this murder out," Brenda moaned. "It's due right after Halloween." "I could come over after work," Dinah suggested. "About 8? "Okay, good," Brenda said. "I'll call Tracy and tell her to come too. See you." Dinah headed away, hunched under the weight of her backpack. Brenda went jogging back to her. "By the way, what's your costume going to be? You know, for my party." Dinah sighed. "I don't know. I think I'm just going to be a monk." "Huh? A what?" Brenda demanded. "A monk," Dinah repeated. "I found this huge old brown bathrobe with a hood in my mom's closet. I guess it used to belong to my dad. It looks like the perfect monk's robe." She dodged 2 cheerleaders who came running at full speed toward the gym. "I'm not good at sewing and stuff like you and Tracy," she added, almost apologetically. "Sounds like a comfortable costume," Brenda told her. "I'm going to sweat like a pig in mine." Dinah said something in reply, but it was lost among the shouts and laughter in the crowded hallway. Brenda watched Dinah disappear out of the double front doors. Then she turned the corner to head to her locker and stopped. There was Hallie near the end of the hall. Brenda recognized the blonde hair first, so messy, falling down over Hallie's eyes. Hallie was leaning against a closed locker. She had her hands on a boy's shoulder. She was smiling at him with red lipsticked lips. And the boy was Noah, Tracy's boyfriend. Brenda froze in the middle of the corridor and stared. Noah and Hallie were laughing about something. She pretended to slap his face, just let her hand glide over his cheek, didn't really hit him. Noah's normally pale skin turned bright pink. He was about 3 inches shorter than Hallie. He had straw-colored hair, cut very short with yellow sideburns. He was wearing a silver and blue McKinley high jacket with a big silver M on the front, the letter that he had won on the wrestling team. He gave Hallie a playful shove. She shoved him back. They laughed. Hallie started to walk away. I don't believe this, Brenda thought. First she's kissing Ted right in my driveway. And now she's coming on to Tracy's boyfriend in front of the whole school? What is her problem? I have to find Tracy, Brenda thought, her mind racing feverishly. I have to tell her. No, she argued with herself. I can't tell her. 2 teachers hurried past, talking about last Friday's McKinley football game. Did you see the size of Wakely's fullback? One of them said. Do they give him steroids, or do they just inflate him? The halls were growing quieter as students headed out the door. A girl called to Brenda, and she turned to say hi. When she turned back, Brenda saw that Noah was alone now, and he was staring down the hall at her. As he started toward her, moving quickly with his lumbering gait, she had an impulse to run, but he was right in front of her before she could get her legs moving. Brenda, hi, he said with false enthusiasm. His round cheeks were dotted with large bright red circles. His forehead was perspiring. His tiny dark eyes studied her face. He had his hands jammed in the pockets of his leather jacket. Hi, Noah, Brenda replied coldly. I saw you watching us, Noah said, a nervous grin spreading across his round face. He wiped his short blonde hair back with a pudgy hand. Yeah, Brenda replied, shifting her backpack on her shoulders. Listen, Brenda, Noah started, his grin fading. He leaned toward her, as if making sure she knew that he was being confidential. Hallie and we were just talking, you know. I mean, that's all. We're in the same math class. We came out, and we were just kidding around about math. Uh-huh, Brenda replied flatly. So you don't have to run and tell Tracy that I was coming on to Hallie or anything, okay? Noah's expression had turned pleading. Brenda had the feeling he might drop to his knees and beg her not to tell Tracy. She stared at his sweating face for a long moment. What on earth does Tracy see in him, she wondered. What does Hallie see? Hey, I won't say anything, she assured Noah. I'm not a cop or something. Noah laughed, a bit too loudly and too long. He had a high-pitched laugh that set Brenda's teeth on edge. You don't look like a cop, he exclaimed. Is that supposed to be a compliment? Brenda shot back. Noah grew serious again. It's just that I know you and Tracy are best friends and, well, I'm not going to run to Tracy every time you talk to a girl in the hall, Brenda told him. Listen, I've got to get home. Yeah, okay. He looked very relieved. See you. He started down the hall, then stopped. Hey, your cousin's really nice, you know? Brenda didn't answer. She gave Noah a wave, turned, and headed to her locker. Hallie must be boy crazy, Brenda thought. First Ted, then Noah. And tonight she had a study date at another boy's house. Is she trying to win over every boy in school? Seated at her small oak desk, Brenda stared down at her history text. The tensor lamp threw down a cone of white light onto the page that seemed to make the words shrivel and blur. I can't concentrate on this stuff, Brenda thought unhappily. I can't concentrate on anything tonight. I have to force Hallie from my mind. I have to stop thinking about her. Tracy had come over right after dinner, eager to get started on the murder mystery plot. Brenda was dying to tell her about seeing Noah and Hallie in the hall together, how they laughed together, how Hallie put her hands all over Noah's face and shoulders as if she owned him. Somehow Brenda held it in, but it drove her crazy the entire evening, made her feel tense and uncomfortable. It must have shown, because at one point Tracy asked, "What's wrong with you tonight?" and Brenda made up some dumb excuse about being nervous about an exam. Dinah had arrived a little after 8. The 3 girls sat around Brenda's room trying to plot their Halloween murder. with little success. "I'm just not inspired tonight," Tracy admitted. "Me either," Dinah quickly agreed. She yawned. "I'm too tired to murder anyone tonight." "Let's try again tomorrow," Brenda suggested. "Think about it, okay? We'll all come up with ideas tomorrow. I'm sure we can think of a good way to murder Hallie. We have to." A few minutes after Tracy and Dinah left, Ted called. "Brenda, I have to talk to you." Those were the only words she let him get out. As soon as she recognized his voice, Brenda slammed the receiver down. Her heart pounding, her mind churning with angry thoughts. She had stared at the phone on her desk and pictured Ted's parked car in her driveway and the messy blonde hair, Hallie's blonde hair, over Ted's face as they kissed. Kissed right under Brenda's bedroom window. "No way I'm talking to you, Ted," Brenda thought bitterly. "No way." She lowered her head, leaned over the desk, and stared down at the blur of tiny words on the page of the textbook. "I can't read this," she thought. "My eyes just keep watering over. Maybe I should set my alarm, get up early, and read it in the morning when I'm fresh." Yes, she slammed the book shut. The book had been carefully wrapped in brown paper cover on the first day of school. Brenda had penciled a heart on the front. Inside were two names, Brenda and Ted. Shaking her head, she lifted a pencil from the cup on the corner of her desk and crossed out Ted's name. Then she clicked off the tinsel lamp and started to get up. She glanced at the clock on her dresser, nearly 11. Then her eyes went to the bedroom window across the room, and Brenda saw the man's face staring in at her, his eyes bulging, his mouth wide in an ugly, leering grin, and she opened her mouth to scream. Chapter 5. The man's bulging eyes stared at Brenda through the glass without blinking. As Brenda screamed, he didn't react. His face remained set in its ghastly, open-mouthed expression, as if he were mimicking her horror. She heard footsteps on the stairs. "Brenda, what's the matter?" her mother's voice called shrilly. Brenda's scream ended in a choked cough. The man still hadn't moved. As she stared at the bulging eyes, she realized he couldn't move. He wasn't real. She lurched to the window and pulled it open. The face was a cardboard cutout, some sort of mask taped to the outside of the window. With a trembling hand, Brenda pulled the face off the window. "Brenda, what happened?" Mrs. Morgan burst into the room, followed by Randy and Hallie. "I heard a scream and—" Brenda held up the ugly cardboard mask. I'm sorry," she stammered. "This face, it was in the window and, well, I thought it was a man." Randy laughed. Hallie tossed her hair behind her head, her eyebrows knit in bewilderment, a frown on her lipsticked lips. "You thought a man was up here?" Mrs. Morgan asked. "On the second floor?" "He stared at me," Brenda exclaimed, still holding the cutout face in front of her. "I looked up and—" Her eyes fell to the back of the mask. Something was written there. "Hey, Brenda, you scared me to death," her mother said with a sigh, shaking her head, raising her hand to her heart. "Me too," Randy cried, giggling. "Someone wrote something on the back," Brenda told them. "It says, 'See you on Halloween.'" Brenda tossed the mask onto her dresser top and glared at Randy. "Funny joke," she muttered angrily. Randy stopped giggling. "Hey, don't look at me, Bren." He backed up toward the bedroom door. "I didn't do it." Brenda took a few steps toward him, her expression menacing. "Come on, Randy. Confess." "Randy, did you deliberately scare your sister like that?" Mrs. Morgan demanded. "No way," Randy protested, but a broad smile spread over his face. "I didn't put that there. Really." "Then why are you grinning?" Brenda asked. "I'm just grinning, that's all." "But I didn't do it, Brenda. I didn't," Randy cried. Brenda turned her gaze to Hallie. Hallie had an amused expression on her face as she watched Brenda accuse Randy. "Hey, don't look at me," Hallie said, catching Brenda's accusing stare. "Why would I tape a dumb mask to your window?" "It was just a silly joke," Mrs. Morgan said. "Why are you so upset, Brenda?" Brenda was beginning to feel a little foolish. "I guess I'm just a little jumpy or something," she muttered, still glaring at Hallie. Hallie did it, Brenda thought, just to make me look like a fool. I can tell by the pleased expression on her face. Hallie did it. "Really, what a fuss over nothing," Mrs. Morgan declared. She turned and followed Randy out the door. "As usual, she's on Hallie's side," Brenda thought bitterly. Hallie quickly said goodnight to Brenda and hurried out the door. "I hope you don't have bad dreams because of it," she said, a smug smile on her face. Brenda didn't reply. When everyone had left, she picked up the mask and examined the back again. "See you on Halloween," she read the scrawled words again and again. What did it mean, she wondered. Was it just Randy or Hallie playing a dumb joke? Or was something really strange going on? Brenda plunged her hands deep into the wet orange goo. Yum, she declared happily. She pulled out a handful and tossed it onto the newspaper spread over the kitchen table. Yuck, Tracy declared. It's really gross. Yeah, Randy cried excitedly. Can I try it? Can I help? I guess, Brenda replied reluctantly. Just don't start throwing it or acting stupid, okay? Randy scooted behind the kitchen table and pushed his way between Brenda and Tracy. He eagerly plunged one hand into the opening on top of the pumpkin, and a devilish grin spread over his face. Randy, I warned you, Brenda cried. Okay. He pulled out a handful of pumpkin. I hate the smell, he declared, making a face. Save the seeds, Tracy said. We can roast them when we're finished. I'll get a big spoon, Brenda said, pushing away from the table. We've got to really scrape this pumpkin clean or else it'll start to smell. Randy pulled out another handful of pumpkin seeds. Then he picked up one of the big kitchen knives and raised it above his head as if preparing to attack Tracy. Randy, put that down, Brenda scolded, returning with a large metal spoon. Those knives are for carving. I can carve, Randy insisted. I'm good at carving. Tracy and I are going to do the carving, Brenda told him firmly. She took the big knife from his sticky, pumpkin-y hand. Hi, everyone. Dinah appeared in the kitchen doorway, wearing a heavy white sweater over black jeans. Sorry I'm late. Emergency at the animal clinic, and I had to stay late. You look tired, Tracy told Dinah as she joined them at the kitchen table. You've got circles under your eyes. I am tired, Dinah confessed with a sigh. I wish I could quit this job, but we really need the money. My dad lost his job, and he hasn't been able to send Mom and me a penny. I'll give you a penny, Randy offered, grinning. Is that your idea of a joke? Brenda snapped. Yeah, he replied. I can't believe you're carving a jack-o'-lantern already, Dinah said, pulling off the heavy sweater to reveal a maroon turtleneck underneath. Your party isn't for 2 more weeks. It'll rot. This is a practice jack-o'-lantern, Brenda told her. I want to have a lot of jack-o'-lanterns at the party. You know, all with candles in them. That'll look great, Dinah said. Can we let it rot? Randy asked. Brenda's so nervous about this party, Tracy told Dinah. That's why we're doing a practice jack-o'-lantern. I'm nervous about everything lately, Brenda said wistfully, tilting the pumpkin to scrape at the inside with the metal spoon. The mask of the man with bulging eyes flashed into her mind. She had an impulse to tell Tracy and Dinah about it, but she decided they'd just laugh at her. I'm nervous about our murder mystery, Dinah said. We don't have a single idea yet. Maybe we can use a jack-o'-lantern in it, Tracy suggested. You know, the murderer slips a jack-o'-lantern over his face and grins the victim to death, Brenda interrupted. That's dumb, Randy said. There, I think it's all cleaned out, Brenda said, putting down the spoon. She wiped a gob of pumpkin off her cheek with the back of her hand. Now I want to draw the face on before we start to carve. What's it going to look like? Like you? Randy asked his sister. Brenda started to reply, but she stopped with her mouth open as an enormous figure filled the hallway, blocking out the light. It's a gorilla, Brenda realized, feeling a shock of surprise tighten her throat. Before she could cry out, the enormous animal lumbered to the table and grabbed a kitchen knife with its hairy hand, raising it menacingly over the pumpkin. Chapter 6. Ah! Brenda uttered a startled cry and grabbed at the knife, but the creature swung its arm away, holding it tightly. Tracy and Dinah both cried out. Randy ducked under the table. The gorilla lowered the knife. Then it raised a hand to the crown of its head, tugged hard, and pulled off its head. Hallie's grinning face was revealed. She shook her head with her mane of blonde hair, which had been tucked tightly into the costume. Like it? She asked. Brenda was still breathing hard. She waited for her heart to stop pounding. Where'd you get that gorilla costume? She finally managed to ask her cousin. Hallie's blue eyes sparkled excitedly. She had scared Brenda, and she knew it, and she seemed to enjoy it. Upstairs in the attic, Uncle Michael showed it to me. It was in an old trunk. I knew it was just a costume, Randy said, bobbing up from under the table. It's a great costume, Tracy declared. It's so hairy. Yeah, Dinah agreed. It looks so real. I'm going to wear it to your party, Hallie said, turning around in a circle to model it. It's perfect. She set the head down on the kitchen counter. I didn't scare you, did I, Brenda? No, I was just surprised, Brenda replied. It's a great costume, she admitted. I've never seen it before. I wonder why Dad never showed it to me. Hallie scratched her armpits like a monkey, and hopping up and down, muttered some gorilla grunts, grinning at Randy. Then she glanced at the kitchen clock above the stove, and her expression changed. "Can I borrow your car, Bren?" "Huh?" The question caught Brenda by surprise. She had loaned her precious blue Geo to Hallie and Ted once, but she didn't want Hallie to make a habit of driving it. After all, it was Brenda's. "I'll be really careful," Hallie said, putting her hairy gorilla hands together in a begging pose. "I promised to meet someone at the mall, and your parents took their car. Please, Bren." Brenda saw that both Tracy and Dinah were eyeing her, waiting to see how she'd react, and she decided she really had no choice. "Sure, Hallie," she replied. "Take the car. The keys are on the table in the front entryway." "Thanks," Hallie said, tucking the gorilla mask under her arm. She padded out of the kitchen. Brenda could hear her heavy footsteps on the stairs as she hurried up to her room to change. "That was nice of you," Tracy told Brenda, a note of surprise in her voice. "Too nice," Dinah added in a low voice. "Oh," Brenda cried out as she felt a sharp pain shoot through her hand. She lowered her eyes and saw a trickle of bright red blood on the newspaper beside the pumpkin. It took her a while to realize that she had been gripping one of the kitchen knives by the blade and had cut her finger. "Now why did I do that?" she cried, more to herself than the others. She wrapped the finger in a paper towel and hurried to the bathroom to get a bandage for it. When she returned to the kitchen, Tracy and Dinah were busy with black markers, drawing a face onto the front of the hollowed-out pumpkin. Randy had deserted them and gone to the den to watch television. "Do you like this face?" Tracy asked, tilting the pumpkin so Brenda could see it better. "Pretty good," Brenda replied. She pulled a pumpkin seed from Tracy's straight black hair. "Make the teeth bigger. They'll be easier to carve." "Hallie really scared me bursting in like that in that ugly costume," Dinah admitted. "I think she wanted to scare us," Tracy replied, drawing bigger teeth on the pumpkin. "Lots of scares around here lately," Brenda said wistfully. "You should have been here last night." She told them about the mask taped to the outside of her bedroom window with the message scrawled on the other side. "That was one of Randy's little jokes, right?" Dinah asked. Brenda shook her head. "I don't think so. Randy swears he didn't do it." She stopped talking as she heard Hallie's footsteps in the front hallway. She heard the jingle of car keys, and then the front door slammed behind Hallie. "I think Hallie did it," Brenda said, whispering, even though her cousin had left the house. "Huh? Why?" Tracy demanded, finishing the new teeth and reaching for a carving knife. "Why would Hallie do a dumb thing like that?" Brenda shrugged. "Beats me. Why does Hallie do anything?" "Give the poor kid a break," Dinah muttered. "Let's change the subject," Brenda said sharply. "I've been thinking about our murder plot." Tracy dug the knife blade into the pumpkin and began carefully slicing out the first triangular eye. "You have an idea about how Hallie is going to get it?" "Well," Brenda said, picking up 2 pumpkin seeds and rolling them around in her hand, "I still like the idea of making it a Halloween murder." "Yeah, that's cool," Tracy replied with immediate enthusiasm. "It should take place at a costume party, just like the one you're going to have," Dinah said, pushing at the sides of her short brown hair. "That's what I'm thinking," Brenda said. "Everyone is in costume, see? And Hallie is in her gorilla costume." "And someone feeds her a poison banana," Tracy exclaimed. Brenda and Dinah laughed. "We need something bloodier," Brenda said. Tracy pulled the knife from the pumpkin, raised it high, and made some quick stabbing motions with it. "Chop, chop, chop," she said, smiling. "Yeah, that's better," Brenda cried. "I like the idea that she's stabbed right through the big hairy gorilla suit." "And no one knows she's been stabbed," Dinah offered. "Huh?" Brenda reacted with surprise. She tossed the 2 pumpkin seeds onto the pile in the newspaper. "I don't get it. The costume is so thick and heavy, no one knows she's been stabbed." Dinah explained. "She's sitting in a chair, and everyone thinks she's just sitting there enjoying the party, until they see this blood stain start to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And no, how about this? The costume starts to fill up with blood," Tracy suggested excitedly. "I mean, like, all of Hallie's blood pours out into the costume, and it's like a big water balloon, only it's filled with blood." "Yuck," Brenda cried, making a disgusted face. "Gross." "I like it," Dinah declared quietly. "We just need some kind of trick," Brenda said, squeezing the bandage on her cut finger. "Something really clever, you know? You think you know who killed Hallie, but it turns out to be someone completely different." "How about Ted?" Tracy asked, cutting into the triangular nose of the pumpkin. "How about if Ted is the murderer?" "Leave him out of it," Brenda said sharply. "He's not invited." "Have you talked to Ted?" Dinah asked. No way, Brenda insisted, shaking her head. No way I'll ever talk to him again. The creep. She could feel her face growing red. Did you tell Hallie you saw her and Ted? Tracy asked. Brenda's face grew even hotter. I try to talk to Hallie as little as possible. So Ted's not invited to your party? Dinah asked. Brenda said, picking up the pumpkin seeds again. No way. So then we definitely should murder him in our story, Tracy said, concentrating on her carving. He called me, but I hung up on him, Brenda told them. He tried to talk to me in the lunchroom this afternoon, but I ran out the door. I think maybe he got the hint. She uttered a quiet sob. I can't believe Hallie would do that to me. Tracy was halfway finished with the mouth. Anyone else want to carve? Just finish it, Dinah told her. You're doing a great job. She turned to Brenda. I hope Hallie didn't just borrow your car to go meet Ted. The idea hadn't occurred to Brenda. She clenched her teeth so hard her jaw hurt. I hope not, she said darkly, for both their sakes. Brenda glanced down at her injured finger. Oh no, dark blood was seeping through the bandage. I hope I don't need stitches on this thing. I'm going upstairs and put a new bandage on. I'm almost finished with the mouth, Tracy called after her. Great. When I come back we can clean up, Brenda said. She hurried up the stairs, holding her finger, thinking about Hallie and Ted. She wouldn't borrow my car to meet my boyfriend, would she? Upstairs, Brenda saw that the lights were on in her bedroom. That's strange, she thought. She didn't remember leaving them on. She made her way down the narrow, carpeted hall to her room and stopped in the doorway, and uttered a loud gasp of horror. It's blood, she realized. Blood smeared all over the wallpaper. Brenda felt a surge of dizziness. Her eyes went in and out of focus. When they cleared, she saw to her horror that the dark blood smears spelled out words. Gripping the doorframe with both hands, she read the words aloud in a trembling whisper. See you on Halloween.